Thoughts to listen to while falling asleep for artists. Phase 1. Slowing down and letting go. Let your body settle. Let your breath slow. There is nothing you need to do right now, nowhere you need to be, nothing waiting for your attention tonight. Right now, in this moment, the only thing that exists is a quiet space, and you are welcome to rest inside it for as long as you like. Creativity is often thought of as something urgent. A fire. A burst. A sudden arrival of brilliance at 2 in the morning that demands you get up and make something before the feeling disappears. And sometimes it is like that. But more often, far more often than we tend to believe, creativity is something quieter. It lives closer to stillness than to urgency. It grows best not when we are chasing it, but when we are simply open to it. So tonight, let these thoughts drift through you gently. Not as lessons. Not as things you need to remember or apply or act on. Just as ideas, passing softly, the way clouds move across the sky when no one is in any particular hurry. Rest, they say, and they have been saying it for a very long time, rest supports creative thinking. This is not just a suggestion. It is something researchers have returned to again and again, looking at how the mind works when it is allowed to recover. When we are tired, truly tired, the brain becomes a kind of traffic jam. Ideas get stuck behind other ideas. Everything feels harder than it should. The sentence that would have come easily in the morning refuses to come at midnight. The color that felt obvious yesterday looks wrong today. But when we rest, when we genuinely allow the body and the mind to stop working, something shifts. The traffic clears. The pathways open. And very often, the idea that seemed out of reach simply arrives. The way a word you've been trying to remember suddenly surfaces in the quiet after you've stopped trying. Rest is not the absence of work. It is, in its own quiet way, a kind of work. The kind that happens beneath the surface. The kind the mind does on your behalf while you are not watching. So rest tonight. Let that be enough. And consider this: taking breaks, not just sleep but small pauses, little moments of stepping away during the day, can improve creative output. Not reduce it. Improve it. There is a kind of guilt many creative people carry. The feeling that to stop is to fall behind. That the painter who takes a walk instead of working on the canvas is being lazy. That the writer who closes the laptop and makes a cup of tea is wasting time that could have been spent on something real. But the research, and more importantly the quiet testimony of so many artists and makers and thinkers throughout history, suggests something different. The walk is part of the work. The cup of tea is part of the work. The moment you spend staring out the window at nothing in particular, that is often where the best ideas live. The mind does not create in a straight line. It wanders. It circles. It needs to breathe. And when you give it permission to breathe, it gives you something back. Step away when you need to. Come back when you are ready. Trust the interval. There is also something to be said for silence. Not the forced silence of a library, or the tense silence of waiting for something to happen. But the soft, open silence that comes when you are not filling every moment with sound, with input, with noise. Spending time in silence can help artists notice ideas that are already there, already forming at the edges of awareness, simply waiting for a moment quiet enough to be heard. We live in a world that moves very fast and makes very much noise. There is almost always something playing, something pinging, something asking for a response. And in that constant stream of input, the quieter signals, the ones that carry something genuinely interesting, genuinely personal, can get lost. But in silence they surface. A small image, a half-remembered feeling, a question you did not know you were carrying. These are the seeds of things. They do not announce themselves loudly. They come gently, in the in-between moments, in the gaps between one thought and the next. You do not have to search for them. You only have to get quiet enough to notice them when they arrive. And here is something else, something that can take a long time to learn, and that many creative people are still learning. Not every idea has to be perfect. Let that settle for a moment. Not every idea has to be perfect. The drawing does not have to be a masterpiece. The first draft of the song does not have to be the song that gets recorded. The sketch does not have to be the painting. The plan does not have to be the finished thing. Everything begins somewhere rougher, simpler, more uncertain than it eventually becomes. The captured idea may turn out to be less interesting than it seemed in the moment of arrival. That is fine. You will know that now, instead of spending the next 3 days trying to remember what it was. There is also deep value in looking backward. Revisiting old artwork, work you made months or years ago, work you may have considered finished or abandoned or failed, can spark new ideas in ways that looking only forward cannot. Because the person who looks at the old work is not the same person who made it. Time has passed. You have changed. And the changed eye sees things in the old work that the eye that made it could not see. Sometimes you revisit old work and find it is better than you remembered. That is a pleasant surprise and worth noting, because the inner critic who tells you that nothing you make is any good is not always or even often telling the truth. Sometimes you revisit old work and find it is worse than you remembered. That is useful information too. It tells you something about how far you have come, which is its own kind of encouragement. And sometimes, this is the most interesting possibility, you revisit old work and you see in it the beginning of something that was never finished. An idea that was introduced and then not followed through. A direction that was pointed toward and then abandoned. A quality in the work that, at the time, you did not know what to do with, but that now that you are different, now that you know more, now that you have been somewhere and come back, you understand how to develop. Old work is not dead. It is dormant. And it is worth going back to look at it with new eyes from time to time, to see what is still alive in it. Revising the same piece multiple times is a related practice, and one that resists the culture of constant forward motion. The idea that making something new is always more valuable than returning to something old and looking more carefully at it. But revision is where a great deal of the most important creative work actually happens. The first version of almost anything is a discovery, a finding out of what the thing might be. The second version begins to understand what it is trying to do. The third version starts to clear away what is not serving that purpose. And somewhere in the later versions, if you stay patient and honest and willing, something emerges that the first version could not have been. Something refined, something considered, something that has been lived with long enough to tell you what it needs. Revision requires a particular kind of creative courage. The courage to look at what you have made and say, this is not finished yet. And the courage to keep returning to it without losing faith that it is worth returning to. Revise patiently. The work rewards it. Now here is something that might feel uncomfortable but is worth sitting with. Studying your own mistakes improves creativity. Not in a spirit of self-criticism. Not in the spirit of the inner voice that lists your failures and finds them evidence of fundamental inadequacy. But in the spirit of genuine, curious, non-judgmental inquiry. The same spirit a scientist brings to an experiment that did not produce the expected result. What happened here? What was I trying to do and what did I do instead? Where exactly did the work go wrong? Was it in the conception, in the execution, in a decision made somewhere in the middle that sent everything in the wrong direction? What can I learn from this particular not quite right thing that I could not learn any other way? Mistakes are information. They are specific, personal, directly relevant information about your own particular creative process. Information you cannot get from a book or a teacher or a course, because no one else makes your specific mistakes in your specific way for your specific reasons. The creative person who studies their mistakes with genuine curiosity is learning something that cannot be taught. They are mapping their own blind spots. And a mapped blind spot is no longer quite as blind. There is a related practice that is subtler and perhaps even more rewarding, paying attention to accidental details. The mark you did not intend to make. The word that appeared in the draft before you knew what you meant by it. The color that mixed differently than you expected. The texture that happened on its own while you were thinking about something else. These accidental details are not always interesting. But sometimes, more often than you might expect, they are the most interesting thing in the piece. The thing that has a quality the deliberate decisions do not have, because it was not made by the controlling, planning, deciding part of the mind. It was made by something else. Something that does not follow instructions. When you notice an accidental detail that has real quality to it, stop. Do not immediately incorporate it or improve upon it or make it deliberate. Just look at it for a while. Try to understand what it is doing that the intentional work is not. Try to learn from it without domesticating it. The accident knows something the plan does not. It is also worth looking outward, at the work of others, and specifically at how other creative people solve visual and formal problems. The rule that says the horizon should not divide the image exactly in half exists because, in most cases, equal division creates a kind of visual stasis, a deadness, a standoff between sky and earth in which neither wins and the image loses energy. But there are images in which exactly that stasis is the point, in which the perfect division of the frame speaks precisely to the emotional content of what is being made, to a stillness, a balance, a tension held in suspension. And in those images the rule broken is not a mistake. It is a choice. A meaningful, earned, specific choice. Know the rules. Follow them until you understand them well enough to know when not to. And then break them exactly where the breaking serves the work. Not everywhere. Not as a statement. Just there, in that one place where the deviation is the truth. Consider, too, the practice of simplification. Simplifying a subject to its essence is one of the most demanding things a maker can do. It looks, from the outside, like doing less. But it requires a quality of understanding, of having looked at the subject so carefully and so thoroughly that you know what is essential and what is not, that doing more never asks for. The sculptor who removes everything from the stone that is not the sculpture. The writer who cuts the paragraph that they worked hardest on because the paragraph, however good, is not what the piece needs. The composer who leaves the rest rather than filling it, because the silence is the note that was needed. These are not acts of reduction. They are acts of revelation. The removal of everything that was obscuring the essential thing. To simplify well, you must first understand deeply. You must spend enough time with the subject, observing it, making it, failing to make it, trying again, that you eventually know it from the inside. Know what it is trying to be. Know what serves that becoming and what does not. And then remove what does not, even when it is beautiful, even when it was difficult to make, even when you are attached to it. What remains, after honest simplification, is the thing itself. Uncluttered. Clear. More powerful for having been freed from everything that surrounded it. Think about rhythm now, not musical rhythm, though that is part of it, but the rhythm of a composed space, of a page, of an image. The movement between what is dense and what is open. Changing rhythm within a piece, between areas that are full, complex, active, demanding of attention, and areas that are spare, empty, quiet, giving the eye or the mind a place to rest, creates a kind of breathing inside the work. An expansion and contraction. A pulse. Dense areas draw attention, create energy, demand engagement. Open areas release that tension, allow the breath to slow, give the person experiencing the work a moment to absorb what they have just encountered before the next demand is made. Work that is uniformly dense exhausts. Work that is uniformly open loses energy, becomes listless, fails to hold. But work that moves between the two, that builds and releases, gathers and opens, fills and clears, has a quality of life, of breath, of time moving through it, that the uniform piece cannot have. Think of where your work breathes, where it holds, whether you give the audience enough space to absorb what you are offering them, and enough density to give them something worth absorbing. Find the rhythm. Trust it. Let it be uneven if that is what the piece needs. And finally, in this deep, slow, philosophical part of the night, consider repetition. Not the repetition of something identical, but repetition with variation. The return to the same element, the same shape, the same phrase, the same motif, rendered each time slightly differently. Transposed, inverted, enlarged, quieted, changed in color or weight or context. Using repetition with variation is one of the oldest structural principles in human creative work. It is present in music, the theme that returns changed by everything that has happened in the piece between its first appearance and its return. It is present in architecture, the repeated arch, each one the same shape but slightly different in proportion or material or context. It is present in storytelling, the returned phrase, the image that appeared early and appears again later carrying everything the story has accumulated in the meantime. Repetition creates recognition. The second time something appears, the audience knows it, and that knowing creates a relationship, a thread of connection running through the work. Variation creates development. The thing that returns is not quite the same as it was, and the difference tells you something. About how far the work has come. About what has changed. About what the repeated element means now in its new context, that it could not have meant when it first appeared. Together, repetition and variation, the return and the transformation, they create the feeling of a journey. Of having traveled somewhere and come back changed. Of time having passed and things having happened that cannot be undone. That is what the deepest creative work offers its audience. Not just a statement made once and complete, but a journey, a moving through, an experience of time passing and meaning accumulating in something, by the end, having changed. Let that be with you now as your own journey through this night continues, deeper into the quiet, deeper into the dark, further along the slow, patient path towards sleep. You have been on many journeys. You have made many things and returned to many things and learned from both the making and the returning. And what you have accumulated, in your hands, in your eye, in the particular wisdom of a person who has spent real time paying careful attention to what they love, is something that took years to build and that is more yours than anything else you own. It is enough. It has always been enough. Rest now in the knowledge of it. Let the work wait. It will still be there in the morning, patient as the subject you keep returning to, ready for the next conversation, faithful to you in the way that only the things that truly matter can be faithful. Sleep. And let the deep, slow knowing of a creative life well lived settle into you like sediment finding the floor of still water. Quietly. Completely. At rest. Phase 9. Letting go into sleep. You're almost there now. That place you have been drifting toward all evening, that soft, dark, borderless place where thinking becomes dreaming and dreaming becomes something quieter still, is very close. You can feel it in the weight of your limbs. In the way the thoughts are coming slower now with more space between them. In the way the room has become less a room and more a feeling, less a place and more a state of being. There is nothing left to do tonight. Nothing to plan, nothing to decide, nothing to solve or complete or begin. The only thing left is the simplest thing, the oldest thing, the thing your body already knows how to do without any instruction at all. But before the last light goes, let a few more thoughts move through you. Slowly. Easily. The way the final pieces of a day drift through the mind in those last moments before sleep claims you entirely. Let them come like water. Let them go the same way. Consider how the work changes when you are not watching it. Allowing artwork to evolve over time, setting something aside unfinished and returning to it later, giving it space to breathe and settle and become clearer in your absence, is one of the most counterintuitive and most consistently rewarding things a creative person can do. Because the work does not stop when you stop. Something continues, beneath the surface of conscious attention, in the days or weeks or months while the piece sits untouched. The mind keeps working on what it cares about, quietly without being asked. In the background of other tasks, in the margins of other thinking, in the loose associative wandering of the mind at rest, something is still turning the problem over. Still finding new angles on it. Still asking questions that the working sessions did not have space for. And when you return, when you sit down again with the piece that has been waiting, you often find that you see it differently. That the thing that seems stuck has quietly unknotted itself. That the direction that was unclear has, in your absence, become obvious. That the work has evolved not despite your stepping away from it but because of it. Time is an ingredient, not a delay, not a failure to finish. A genuine, active ingredient in the making, doing something that deliberate sessions cannot do. Let your work rest when it needs to. Trust what happens in the interim. And trust, too, the value of returning to old themes, not just old individual pieces but old territories, old questions. The themes you explored years ago before you knew what you know now, before you had become who you are now. Revisiting a theme after months or years is never the same as the first exploration of it. How could it be? The person who comes back to it is not the person who left it. Years have passed. Things have happened, some of them joyful, some of them difficult, all of them formative. The theme has not changed, but you have. And the changed you, bringing everything accumulated in the intervening time, finds different things in the same territory. The theme of loss explored at 22 and explored again at 40 carries different weight, different texture, different specific gravity. The question of belonging asked in the early years of a creative life and asked again after decades of making is a different question. Not because the words have changed but because the person asking has accumulated so many more partial answers, so many more complicated encounters with the question, that the asking itself is richer, more layered, more informed by everything that the earlier asking could not yet know. Return to your old themes when they call you back. They are not finished with you. And you are not finished with them. Let your mind drift now toward a different kind of making, the kind that does not begin with something seen, but with something remembered or heard or simply felt. Creating based on memory, sound, or feeling is a way of making that bypasses the visual world entirely and goes directly to the interior, to the images and textures and qualities that live inside the experience rather than outside it. A piece made from the memory of a specific afternoon carries something that a piece made from direct observation of that place at that time cannot quite have, because the memory has already done a kind of editing. It has kept what was essential. It has let the incidental details fade. What remains, in memory, is often the emotional truth of the experience rather than the factual record of it. Music does something similar. It creates an emotional atmosphere, a quality of feeling, that the work made in its presence absorbs without knowing it is absorbing. And feeling itself, that wordless, preverbal sense of what something is like, of what it would look or sound or move like if it could be made, is one of the most direct routes into genuinely personal work, because it bypasses the intellect entirely and speaks from the body, from the accumulated sense memory of a life fully lived. Make something from a memory tonight in your imagination. Not a photograph-accurate reconstruction, something truer than that. The feeling of the memory, the color of it, the emotional register. The thing it left in you that is still there, still available, still waiting to be made into something. You do not have to make it now. Let it simply exist as a possibility, as a door left slightly open. Now, gently, without any pressure, in the spirit of someone who has long since made peace with this, consider the discomfort. Working through creative discomfort leads to breakthroughs. This is true. You may already know it from your own experience. The piece that refused to come together, that fought you for days or weeks, that made you wonder if you had lost whatever ability you once had. And then, on the other side of that refusal, something opened. Something gave way. And what came through the opening was unlike anything you could have arrived at if the path had been easy. Discomfort in creative work is not a signal that something is wrong. It is often a signal that something is right, that you are working at the edge of what you currently know how to do, which is exactly where growth lives. Comfortable work, work that unfolds easily and meets no resistance, is often work that is not quite challenging you enough. Not quite asking enough of you. Not quite taking you anywhere you have not already been. The difficulty is the edge. And the edge is where the new territory begins. You do not have to push through the discomfort tonight. Tonight is for rest. But know, as you drift towards sleep, that the difficult piece waiting for you, the one that has been resisting, the one that has not yet become what it is trying to become, is not a failure. It is a frontier. And frontiers, by definition, are where the unknown begins. Improving creativity by exploring the unknown is, in the end, simply this: going somewhere you have not been, making something you do not yet know how to make, asking a question whose answer you cannot predict. Doing it with as much curiosity and as little fear as you can manage. And doing it again tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. The unknown is not a threat. It is where everything interesting lives. Everything that has ever been made that was genuinely new was made by someone willing to not know yet. To proceed without certainty. To trust that the making itself would teach them what they needed to learn. You have been willing. You are willing still. And finally, this one is gentle and small, and perhaps the most honest of all the thoughts we have shared tonight. Pay attention to what bores you. Notice it clearly. Note it if you like. Write it down somewhere, acknowledge its presence, give it a name. And then let it go. Not everything is for you. Not every technique, not every form, not every subject, not every approach that works beautifully for someone else will work for you or matter to you or deserve your sustained attention. Some things are simply not yours. And knowing that, being able to recognize the thing that does not call to you and to put it down without guilt or self-judgment, is its own kind of creative wisdom. The creative life is long. The time and energy you have to give to it are real and finite and precious. Spend them on the things that genuinely call to you. Follow the interest, not the obligation. Follow the pull, not the should. What bores you is information. It is pointing you, by contrast, toward what does not bore you. Toward the things that make time disappear, that make you forget to eat, that you think about when you are supposed to be thinking about something else. Those things, those unreasonable, specific, inexplicable things that will not leave you alone, are the ones worth following. The rest can be let go. And now let everything be let go. The observations and the experiments. The collaborations and the conversations. The old themes and the new questions. The difficult pieces and the easy ones. The mistakes that taught you something and the accidents that surprised you. The rules learned and the rules broken. The daily practice and the long series and the single subject returned to until it gave up all its secrets. All of it. Let it all drift, slowly, the way leaves drift on still water. Moving without urgency. Going where they go. Settling, eventually, somewhere gentle. Your ideas are not gone. They are not lost. They are resting, the way all living things rest, quietly in the dark, gathering themselves for what comes next. They will be there tomorrow, patient and faithful, waiting for the moment when you are ready to return to them. Everything you have thought tonight, everything that has passed through you, everything that landed softly and took root somewhere beneath conscious awareness, it is still there, still working, still turning slowly in the deep, dark, generative quiet of a mind that never entirely stops caring about the things it loves. The work will wait for you. It always does. And tomorrow, when the light returns and the day begins again and you sit down with whatever piece has been waiting, or whatever new beginning is ready to be made, you will find that the rest has done something. That the night has been, in its quiet way, part of the process. That sleeping, like all the other things we talked about tonight, is not time away from the creative life. It is part of it. An essential, irreplaceable part. The part that makes everything else possible. So rest now. Completely. Without guilt or hurry or the feeling that there is something else you should be doing. There is nothing else. There is only this. The slow breath. The heavy body. The softening mind. The dark, which is not empty but full of the ideas and images and half-formed things that are resting, just like you, gathering themselves, waiting for morning. Your ideas will be there tomorrow. Resting just like you. Good night.